There's a specific kind of conversation that happens at almost every dinner table, every friend group, every workplace lunch break. Someone brings up money. Maybe it's about the market. Maybe it's about housing prices. Maybe it's just someone complaining about how expensive everything has gotten. And suddenly, everyone has something to say. One person explains why they'd never rent when they could buy. Someone else talks about crypto or index funds or how their cousin made a fortune flipping houses. There's always someone who knows exactly what the problem with the economy is. Someone who's read the books, someone who can quote Warren Buffett. And then the lunch break ends. Everyone goes back to their desk, and nothing changes. I used to think financial knowledge was the gap, that if people just understood money better, if they knew the right strategies, read the right books, watched the right videos, their financial lives would follow. It seemed logical. But here's what I've realized after thinking about this for a long time. The problem was never knowledge. The problem is something much quieter and much harder to fix. We live in a time when financial information has never been more available. There are thousands of free videos explaining exactly how to invest, how to budget, how to get out of debt. The information is everywhere. And yet, most people's financial lives don't reflect that. Not because they haven't tried to learn, but because knowing something and doing something are separated by a gap that information alone cannot cross. Think about it this way. Almost everyone knows that eating less processed food and exercising regularly would improve their health. That information isn't hidden. It's not complicated. And yet, the majority of people don't consistently do it because they lack knowledge. Because behavior doesn't run on knowledge. It runs on something else entirely. The same thing is happening with money. There are two types of financially conscious people in the world. The first type is aware. They follow finance accounts, understand compound interest. They know what an index fund is. They've started a budget at least twice. They talk about money thoughtfully and intelligently at dinner. Second type is effective. They may know less. They may not have sophisticated opinions about macroeconomics, but their accounts are growing quietly in the background. They're building something, slowly and without much noise. What separates these two groups is not intelligence. It's not income. It's not even discipline in the way most people think about it. It's something behavioral. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The first thing that separates talkers from builders is what psychologists call the intention-action gap. This is one of the most documented patterns in behavioral science. People consistently intend to do things they never actually do, and this gap is widest in areas that involve delayed rewards, things where the benefit comes later, but the effort comes now. Money is the perfect environment for this gap to thrive. When you invest money today, you don't feel richer today. When you skip an unnecessary purchase, you don't feel more secure today. The emotional payoff is distant, abstract, easy to postpone. And so, the intention, I'll start next month. I'll set that up after the holiday. I'll sort my finances out when things calm down. Lives permanently in the future, while today stays exactly the same. People who build wealth have found a way to shrink that gap, not through willpower, not through motivation, but through a very different relationship with time. They've trained themselves to feel the future in the present. When someone who is genuinely building wealth transfers money into savings, they feel something, not deprivation, not sacrifice, something closer to quiet satisfaction, like they've already done something today that their future self will thank them for. The reward isn't delayed for them in the same way. That's a learned skill, not a personality trait you either have or don't. The second difference is how each group handles imperfection. Here's something that almost no one talks about honestly. Financially aware people, the ones who know the most, are often paralyzed by their own knowledge. They know enough to see all the ways a plan could go wrong, know that timing matters, that fees matter, that the wrong fund choice costs money. And so they wait for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, perfect information before they act. Meanwhile, someone who knows less gets started. They open a basic investment account. They pick a simple index fund. They set up an automatic transfer for an amount that feels manageable. It's not optimized. It's not perfect. It's running. And while the first person is still researching, the second person's money is already compounding. It's a term for what holds the first person back. It's called analysis paralysis, and in the context of personal finance, it is remarkably common among people who are genuinely intelligent and genuinely engaged with the topic. The irony is painful when you look at it directly. The more you know about the complexity of financial planning, the more intimidating it becomes to start imperfectly. But perfection is not how wealth is built. Consistency is how wealth is built. And you cannot be consistent at something you haven't started. The third difference is subtler. I think it might be the most important one. It's about identity. People who talk about money relate to it as a topic, something they engage with, think about, follow. Like someone who loves football but never plays. They understand the game deeply. They have opinions. They're watching from the outside. People who build wealth relate to it as part of who they are, not in an obsessive or materialistic way, but in a quiet, settled sense that managing money well is just what they do. It's not a project they're working on. It's a reflection of how they see themselves. This matters more than almost anything else because identity is what drives behavior when motivation runs out. And motivation always runs out. When you're motivated, you check your budget, you transfer to savings, you research your options. But motivation is a feeling, and feelings pass. When the motivation is gone, what's left? If your financial behavior depends on feeling motivated, it stops the moment you don't. But if it's tied to identity, if being someone who manages money well is part of who you are, then you do it the same way you brush your teeth. Not because you feel inspired, because it's just what you do. So how does someone build that identity if they don't currently have it? Here's the shift that I think matters most. Most people approach their financial life as a problem to be solved. They frame it as something broken that needs fixing. And that framing is quietly corrosive because it means they're always starting from a position of deficit, always trying to dig out of something, always responding to what's wrong. People who build wealth over time tend to frame it differently, not as a problem to fix, but as a direction to move in. Not from deficit, but toward something. It sounds like a small distinction, but it changes everything about the decisions you make day to day. When your financial behavior is about fixing what's broken, every setback confirms the problem. Every month you don't save enough is more evidence that you're bad at money. The story stays the same, but when your financial behavior is about building something, even slowly, even imperfectly, every small action is evidence in the other direction. Every automatic transfer, every dollar not spent unconsciously, every time you look at your balance instead of avoiding it, is a vote for a different story about who you are. James Clear, who wrote about habit formation, described this concept with the phrase, casting votes for your identity. Become the person who manages money well, not by deciding to be that person, but by repeatedly acting like that person in small, low-stakes ways. The identity follows the behavior, not the other way around. This realization changes the question you ask yourself. Instead of, how do I fix my finances? You start asking, what would someone who manages money well do in this moment? That question is more useful than almost any piece of financial advice you'll ever receive. So, if you want to close the gap between knowing and doing, here's where I'd actually start. First thing is to automate one thing before you optimize anything. Don't wait until your budget is perfect. Don't wait until you've read enough, or researched enough, or saved enough to feel ready. Pick one financial action, just one, and make it automatic. It could be a small transfer to a savings account on payday. It could be rounding up purchases to save the difference. It doesn't need to be impressive. It needs to happen without you having to decide again every month. Automation is what converts intention into behavior without relying on your emotional state. Your motivation can drop to zero and the action still happens. That's not laziness. That's understanding how real financial progress is actually made. The second thing is to shrink the timeline on how you measure progress. One of the reasons financial behavior is so hard to maintain is that the rewards are so far away. Retirement feels abstract. Financial security feels hypothetical. So bring the measure of progress closer. Check your net worth monthly, not yearly. It's when your savings account crosses a new threshold. Track how many months you've kept a specific habit going. These smaller milestones make the feedback loop tighter and keep behavior consistent before the big rewards arrive. Third thing, and this is the one most people skip, is to have an honest conversation with yourself about your financial identity as it currently exists. Not who you want to be, who you currently are, financially, based purely on your behavior. Not your intentions. Not what you know. What you actually do. Look at the last 3 months of financial decisions and ask what they reveal about the person making them. This isn't a guilt exercise. It's a clarity exercise. Because you cannot move toward something if you don't first know honestly where you're standing. I want to leave you with something that I think about often. The gap between knowing and doing isn't a character flaw, not laziness or weakness, or a sign that you're uniquely broken. It's a deeply human pattern that affects almost everyone in some area of their life. People who close that gap in their financial lives don't do it because they're different from you. They do it because they stopped waiting to feel ready, stopped waiting for the perfect plan, started making small decisions that slowly rewrote the story they believed about themselves and money. That's available to anyone, including you, including people who've started and stopped 3 times, including people who've felt behind for so long it seems like the window has closed. The window hasn't closed. What you know about money already matters. That's not wasted. Knowledge sitting still is just potential. Something into motion, even something small. That potential starts to become something real. You don't have to fix everything this month. You don't have to have the perfect strategy. You just have to close the gap by 1 inch, and then another. It's actually how it happens, for everyone who does it. Not overnight, not perfectly, just forward.